You know, sometimes you hear about these true crime cases, and it's like appearances can be so deceiving.
Yeah.
This one really takes the cake, though.
Oh, yeah.
The story of Janie Lou Gibbs.
Okay.
So picture this, all right? Devout church-going woman running a daycare out of her home,
Mhm.
Cordell, Georgia.
Sounds pretty wholesome.
Right, wholesome. You know, picture it like apple pie, the American dream.
Right.
But she was a serial killer,
Wow.
active in the 1960s.
Really makes you think about that whole you never really know someone thing.
Yeah,
Like, taken to a whole other terrifying extreme.
it really does.
Wow.
And so that's why we're doing this deep dive,
Yeah.
unpacking how she managed to keep her crimes hidden for so long,
Right.
explore the details of her case,
Yeah.
touch on the limitations of forensic science in the 1960s,
Mhm.
which might have played a role in her ability to evade detection for so long.
Yeah. That's going to be really interesting to get into.
Yeah, and so let's start by setting the stage. Janie Lou Gibbs, born in 1932,
Okay.
and for all outward appearances, led a typical life in Cordell,
Mm-hmm.
married to her husband Charles for 18 years,
Okay.
active in their community,
Uh-huh.
involved in their church, the kind of couple you would see
Right. Yeah.
every bake sale, every potluck.
The pillars of the community.
Exactly.
And I think that's what makes this case so unsettling, right?
Yeah.
Because we tend to, we try to associate serial killers with this sense of otherness,
Yeah.
like a darkness that sets them apart.
Yeah.
But Gibbs was so deeply embedded in her community,
Yeah.
a trusted figure,
Yeah.
which makes it, her crimes even more difficult to comprehend.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so, but let's get into the heart of the matter.
Okay.
The murders.
Yeah.
Gibbs' reign of terror began in 1966 with her husband, Charles.
Okay.
She used arsenic,
Wow.
a potent poison,
Mhm.
to kill him.
Okay.
And to add a layer of deception, she even brought him homemade soup laced with more arsenic while he was hospitalized,
Oh.
effectively disguising his death as a liver disease.
Oh my gosh.
That detail is just so chilling to me.
Yeah.
The calculated cruelty of continuing to poison him even as he lay in the hospital.
Right.
It speaks to a level of premeditation and cold-heartedness
Yeah.
that's just difficult to grasp.
Absolutely.
And sadly, Charles was just the first victim
Yeah.
in a string of horrifying deaths.
Wow.
8 months later, she poisoned her youngest son, 13-year-old Marvin.
Oh gosh.
Again, arsenic was her weapon of choice,
Okay.
and his death was attributed to a liver ailment.
So she used that same kind of cover
Yes,
as with her husband.
exactly.
Wow.
It's tragic how she exploited the assumption that he might have inherited his father's supposed condition
Yeah.
to cover her tracks.
Oh.
Like, she used the tragedy of Charles' death to create a believable narrative for Marvin's passing.
Yeah.
So you were talking about before the limitations of forensic science in the 1960s.
Right.
Could you elaborate on that a bit?
Sure. So back then, forensic science wasn't nearly as advanced as it is today.
Okay.
Testing for poisons like arsenic was much less sophisticated, and it wasn't routinely conducted unless there was a strong suspicion of foul play.
Okay.
So Gibbs' ability to present herself as a grieving wife and mother,
Right.
coupled with the seemingly natural causes of death,
Yeah.
likely deflected any initial suspicions.
So she was kind of like a criminal mastermind almost.
Yeah, in a way.
Exploiting both the societal norms and the technological limitations of the time
Exactly.
to her advantage.
Yeah, a horrifying combination of cunning and circumstance.
Wow. And tragically, her reign of terror did not stop there.
Oh, no.
Just a few months later, in 1967, she struck again,
Okay.
taking the life of her 16-year-old son, Melvin.
Oh, my gosh.
Once more, arsenic was the cause of death.
So
This time, it was attributed to a rare muscular disorder.
she was switching it up.
Yes.
Wow.
It's a testament to her calculated approach that she seemingly varied the perceived illnesses, further reducing the likelihood of raising red flags.
Yeah, she was smart.
Yeah, it's almost as if she was studying the medical knowledge of the time,
Right.
finding plausible explanations for each death.
Yeah,
Paints a picture of someone incredibly methodical and deliberate in their actions.
absolutely.
But with each victim, the risk of exposure must have increased.
Yeah, you would think.
Was there ever a point where her carefully crafted facade began to crumble?
There was, and this is where I think we see maybe a shift in her behavior.
Okay.
Perhaps a growing sense of confidence, or maybe just a reckless disregard for the mounting risks.
Okay.
Her surviving son, Robert, married, and Gibbs became a grandmother when Robert's son, Raymond, was born.
You'd think becoming a grandmother, might spark some humanity,
Right.
some sense of familial connection.
Hmm.
But with Janie Lou Gibbs, it seems the opposite happened.
What do you mean?
Both Raymond and Robert died suddenly,
Oh, my God.
just a month apart.
Wow. So the grandchild and then
And then the son?
the son?
Okay.
Okay.
This rapid succession of deaths,
Yeah.
particularly involving a young, healthy man and his infant son, finally raised serious suspicions.
Yeah, that would do it.
It's as if the sheer number of deaths,
Right.
the statistical improbability of it all, finally started to unravel the carefully constructed narrative that she had built around herself.
Right. Like, how much bad luck can one person have?
Exactly.
Wow.
It's a grim reminder that even the most elaborate deceptions can eventually be exposed.
Yeah, the truth has a way of coming out.
It really does. And
Yeah.
speaking of her time in the mental institution,
Yeah.
there's one detail that I found particularly unsettling,
Right.
that she worked as a cook there.
What? I know.
Like in the institution?
In the institution.
Oh my God.
It's a detail that chills me to the bone.
Yeah.
Imagine the audacity,
Right.
the complete lack of remorse
Yeah.
to continue working with food, potentially putting others at risk,
Right.
even after being accused of poisoning her own family.
That's chilling. I was surprised to learn that she worked as a cook in the institution.
Yeah,
That detail really stuck with me.
I bet.
It raises so many questions about remorse,
Right.
manipulation, the very nature of evil.
Yeah.
It also makes me wonder if there was some twisted psychological satisfaction she derived from continuing to work with food in such a setting.
It's a chilling thought,
It is.
and it really highlights the complexity of this case.
Yeah.
We're dealing with someone who, on the surface, appeared to be a pillar of her community,
Right.
a loving mother and wife,
Uh,
yet her actions reveal a darkness that's just so difficult to comprehend.
Absolutely. And that's what makes this deep dive so compelling yet so disturbing.
Yeah.
You know, we're forced to confront the reality that evil can wear many masks,
Right.
even the mask of normalcy.
Absolutely, and that's a truth that resonates even today
Yeah.
as we grapple with cases where seemingly ordinary individuals commit acts of unimaginable cruelty. The Janie Lou Gibbs case serves as a chilling reminder that appearances can be incredibly deceiving
Right.
and that the potential for darkness exists within us all.
It really does. That image of Janie Lou Gibbs working as a cook in the mental institution
Yeah.
really stuck with me. It's just wild.
Yeah.
It speaks volumes, I think, about her psychological makeup,
Uh-huh.
you know? The lack of remorse, the potential for manipulation.
Right.
It's almost as if she took like a perverse pleasure
Yeah.
in continuing to be around food,
Right.
the very instrument of her crimes.
Yeah, it's a chilling detail.
It is.
And it kind of leads us deeper into this psychological labyrinth of this case.
Right.
We've touched upon the possibility of Munchausen syndrome by proxy,
Right.
but let's unpack that a bit further.
Okay.
So could this explain her seemingly contradictory actions?
Okay.
The public persona of the caring mother and wife
Right.
juxtaposed with the cold-blooded killing of her own family.
Right. And for our listeners who might not be familiar with Munchausen syndrome by proxy,
Yeah.
could you give us a brief overview of what it entails?
Certainly. So Munchausen syndrome by proxy, or MSDP,
Okay.
is a mental health condition in which a caregiver,
Mm-hmm.
often a mother,
Okay.
fabricates or induces illness in someone under their care,
Okay.
typically a child,
Okay.
to gain attention and sympathy.
Oh, wow.
They might exaggerate symptoms, tamper with medical tests,
Mm-hmm.
even deliberately poison the victim
Wow.
to create the appearance of illness.
Oh, gosh.
And the motivation, as disturbing as it sounds, often stems from a need for attention, a
Yeah.
desire to be seen as this devoted and suffering caretaker.
So are you suggesting that Janie Lou Gibbs might have poisoned her family members
It's possible.
to garner sympathy and attention?
It's a complex theory,
Yeah.
but it's one that aligns with certain aspects of this case.
Okay.
Remember, she was deeply involved in her church,
Uh-huh.
presented herself as a pillar of the community,
Right.
even donated some of the life insurance money to her church after each death.
Wow.
So it's possible that she saw these tragedies as a way to elevate her status,
Mm-hmm.
to become the object of pity and support within her social circle.
It's a horrifying thought
Yeah.
that someone could manipulate such devastating events
Right.
to fuel their own narcissistic needs.
Absolutely.
But how does MSBP explain the murder of her husband, Charles?
Right.
He wasn't a child under her care.
That's a valid question.
Yeah.
And it highlights the nuances of MSBP.
Okay.
While typically associated with child victims,
Mm-hmm.
some experts believe that it can manifest in other ways,
Okay.
with a spouse or even an elderly parent as the target.
Okay.
The core element is the desire for attention and control,
Right.
achieved through the fabrication or inducement of illness
Oh.
in someone perceived as vulnerable or dependent.
So it's possible that Janie Lou Gibbs viewed her husband,
Yeah.
especially in the context of his supposed illness,
Right.
as someone she could control and manipulate,
It's possible.
using his deteriorating health to garner sympathy and solidify her role as the devoted wife.
Absolutely. And we also have to consider the societal context of the 1960s.
Right.
Women often derive their identity and social standing through their roles as wives and mothers.
Yeah.
A woman's worth was often measured by her ability to care for her family.
So is it possible that Janie Lou Gibbs felt trapped by these societal expectations?
Potentially.
Could she have resorted to these extreme measures to gain a sense of control? To twist the narrative of the dutiful wife and mother to fit her own twisted needs?
It's a fascinating, albeit disturbing angle to consider.
Yeah.
The life insurance payouts after each death
Right.
also factor into this complex equation. While financial gain might not have been the sole motivator,
Right.
it's undeniable that she profited from the deaths of her family members.
That brings us back to that unsettling question.
Yeah.
Did she see her family members as more valuable to her dead than alive?
Right.
Were their lives, in her mind, reduced to mere instruments for her to gain attention,
Yeah.
sympathy, and financial security?
It's a chilling thought.
It is.
And while we can never truly know what was going on in her mind, the
Right.
patterns of her behavior
Yeah.
suggest a profound disconnect between her outward persona and her internal motivations.
It's like we're piecing together a puzzle, but some pieces will always be missing.
Yeah.
You know, we can analyze the evidence, explore the psychological theories, but ultimately we're left with more questions than answers.
Absolutely.
But one thing is clear.
Yeah.
The impact of her crimes on her surviving family members
Right.
must have been immeasurable.
Absolutely. To lose a father, siblings,
Right.
and even a nephew and son
Yeah.
to a mother's murderous acts.
Right.
It's an unimaginable trauma.
It really is. And, you know, it makes you wonder about the long-term impact on her surviving son, Robert, who lost his father, his brothers, his infant son, and even his wife to the woman who was supposed to love and protect him.
Right.
How do you even begin to process such a profound betrayal?
That's a question best left to mental health professionals.
Yeah.
But I think it's safe to say that the healing process, if there is one,
Right.
would be long and arduous,
Yeah.
requiring a lifetime of coping mechanisms and support systems.
Yeah. This case serves as a chilling reminder that the darkest secrets often reside within the walls of seemingly ordinary homes.
Yeah, you never really know what's going on behind closed doors.
It's a stark contrast to the sensationalized portrayal of serial killers we often see in media.
Right.
Janie Lou Gibbs wasn't a shadowy figure lurking in the fringes of society.
Yeah.
She was the friendly face next door,
Right.
the doting grandmother, the active church member.
Yeah, the pillar of the community.
And that's what makes this case so unsettling, so thought-provoking.
It challenges our perceptions of good and evil family and betrayal. It forces us to confront the uncomfortable reality that darkness can reside in the most unexpected places,
Right.
even within the hearts of those closest to us.
And that brings us to another important aspect of this case.
Okay.
The limitations of forensic science in the 1960s.
Yeah.
Had these crimes occurred today with the advancements in toxicology and criminal investigation, would Janie Lou Gibbs have been able to get away with her murderous spree for so long?
It's highly unlikely.
Okay.
The sophistication of forensic testing today would have almost certainly detected the presence of arsenic in the victims' bodies.
Okay.
Furthermore, the heightened awareness of MSBP
Right.
and other forms of medical child abuse
Right.
would likely have raised red flags much earlier in the investigation.
So in a sense, Janie Lou Gibbs was a product of her time,
Yes.
exploiting both the societal norms and the technological limitations of the 1960s to perpetrate her crimes.
Yeah, a chilling reminder that even as we strive for progress, there are always those who seek to exploit the shadows,
Yeah.
to manipulate the systems for their own sinister ends.
And that's why cases like this continue to fascinate us,
Yeah.
to haunt us.
Uh-huh.
They remind us that evil is not always easily recognizable,
Right.
that it can masquerade as normalcy, and that vigilance and awareness are our greatest defenses against the darkness that lurks within the human heart.
You got it.
Absolutely. This case serves as a stark warning to never take things at face value. to question assumptions,
Right.
and to be mindful of the subtle signs of manipulation and abuse.
Yeah.
But there's one more piece of this puzzle we need to examine.
Okay, what's that?
The aftermath of Janie Lou Gibbs's conviction
Okay.
and her controversial release from prison.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one.
That's a chapter that raises a whole host of ethical and emotional questions.
You're right. The fact that she was granted release after serving just over 3 decades of her 5 life sentences
It's crazy.
is a point of contention.
Yeah.
That speaks to the complexities of the justice system,
Right.
particularly when dealing with elderly and infirm inmates.
It must have been incredibly difficult for the surviving family members.
Oh, yeah.
To come to terms with her release.
Right.
To know that the woman who had taken so much from them was walking free.
Yeah.
Potentially living out her final days without facing the full consequences of her actions.
Right.
It's a scenario that highlights the limitations of our legal system and the complexities of seeking true justice in such a horrific case.
And that's precisely where we'll pick up in the final part of our deep dive.
Okay.
We'll explore the circumstances of her release,
Okay.
the ethical debates it sparked,
Right.
and delve into the lingering questions that continue to haunt this case.
Okay.
Questions about remorse, accountability,
Mm-hmm.
and the enduring mystery of what truly motivated Janie Lou Gibbs
Right.
to become a family annihilator.
So we've spent the last 2 parts of this deep dive
Yeah.
really peeling back the layers of the Janie Lou case. And, we're at the point where, for many true crime followers, the story usually ends with a conviction.
The conviction,
But with Gibbs, there's another chapter.
Oh, really?
And I think it speaks volumes about our evolving views on justice, punishment, and the complexities of human nature.
It's the chapter that often gets glossed over, I think.
Yeah.
But in many ways, it's the most unsettling.
Right.
Because it forces us to confront these questions about redemption,
Right.
accountability, and whether some acts are so horrific that forgiveness or even a semblance of peace is simply impossible.
In 1999, after serving over 3 decades of her 5 life sentences,
Wow.
Janie Lou Gibbs was granted release.
Really?
I know. I did not know that.
That decision sparked outrage, confusion.
Yeah, I bet.
Probably a lot of soul-searching for those who had followed the case from the start.
Right.
So are you going to walk us through how this happened?
What were the justifications for releasing someone who had committed such heinous crimes?
It was a confluence of factors.
Okay.
By the late 1990s, Gibbs was in her late 60s.
Okay.
And had been diagnosed with Parkinson's disease.
Right.
Her health was deteriorating.
Okay.
And her lawyers argued that continued incarceration would be cruel and unusual punishment.
Okay.
They painted a picture of a frail, elderly woman who no longer posed a threat to society.
I imagine the families of her victims weren't too thrilled about that.
No, they were outraged.
Yeah.
Many felt that Gibbs's crimes were so monstrous, so calculated, that any suggestion of compassion was simply inappropriate.
Yeah.
For them, justice meant her spending the rest of her days behind bars, paying for her sins.
And, that raises a broader question, doesn't it?
What was that?
About how we as a society define justice.
Right.
Is it purely about punishment, retribution for the harm inflicted, or is there room for mercy? Even in cases where the crimes seem unforgivable.
It's a debate that has raged for centuries.
Yeah.
And there are no easy answers.
Right.
The justice system at its core is supposed to balance the need for accountability with the possibility of rehabilitation.
Right.
But cases like Janie Lou Gibbs's really push us to the very limits of that balance.
Right.
Where do we draw the line between punishment and compassion?
Right. Gibbs died in a nursing home in 2010.
Okay.
Never publicly admitting guilt or expressing remorse for her actions.
So she went to her grave with those secrets.
She did. And for many, this only solidified the belief that she was a manipulative sociopath who gamed the system.
Right.
Right up until the very end.
Until the very end, yeah.
But there's another way to look at it, isn't there?
There is.
We can see her silence as a testament to her enduring capacity for manipulation, her unwillingness to ever truly face the consequences of her actions.
Right.
Or we can view it as a reflection of her deep shame, a burden too heavy to bear even in the face of death.
Yeah. We'll never know for sure.
We really won't. The case of Janie Lou Gibbs isn't just a chilling tale of betrayal and murder.
Right.
It's a mirror reflecting our own societal anxieties and moral complexities.
Absolutely.
It forces us to grapple with uncomfortable truths about the potential for evil that lurks within the human heart,
Yeah.
the limitations of our justice system,
Right.
and the elusive nature of true closure.
And what's so fascinating here
Yeah.
is that it transcends the typical true crime narrative.
Right.
It becomes this societal Rorschach test,
Yeah.
prompting each of us to examine our own beliefs about justice, forgiveness,
Right.
and the complexities of human nature.
Absolutely. And so as we wrap up this deep dive,
Yeah.
I'm left with a sense of unease, a realization that the world is a far more complicated place
Yeah.
than we often like to believe.
Then we want to believe, right?
Than we want to believe. Janie Lou Gibbs's case is a stark reminder that appearances can be deceiving.
Absolutely.
That evil can wear the mask of normalcy, and that even within the bonds of family,
Right.
the potential for darkness can be profound and devastating.
Yeah. And for our listeners, I think the key takeaway is this. Be present. Be observant.
Right.
And never underestimate the importance of questioning assumptions.
Yeah.
We often focus on the sensational, the outwardly monstrous,
Right.
but sometimes the most dangerous individuals are the ones who blend seamlessly into the fabric of our lives.
Right.
The Janie Lou Gibbs case may be closed,
Yeah.
but the conversations it sparks,
Right.
the introspective journey it ignites, that's something we all have the responsibility to continue.
This has been a truly unsettling, but ultimately, I believe,
Yeah.
a necessary exploration of a dark chapter in human history.
Absolutely.
And as unsettling as it is, I
Yeah.
think it leaves us all a little bit wiser.
I hope so.
A little more attuned to the subtleties of human behavior.
Right.
And hopefully a little more determined to prevent such horrors from happening again.
That's the goal.
That's the goal.
Oh,